Hi, you are listening to Rocklaz Radio,
a podcast discussing inspiring personalities and interesting things. This is your host, Tanmay Shah.
Tanmay is an India-based NFT artist and an entrepreneur with diverse business experience.
This podcast is self-sponsored.
The best way to support this show is to buy his art, NFTs. You can also become his patron. Kindly share this episode on socials and with your friends.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rocklaz Radio. On today's show, we have Laurence Fuller, and you will know about him in just a second. Having recently taken on the road to iconic British painter David Hockney in the new HBO Max series Min X, Laurence Fuller is best known for his lead roles in feature films Road to the Well, Apostle Peter and the Last Supper, Painted Red. Laurence Fuller actually got his start in British theatre, training at Bristol Old Vic Theatre School and taking lead role in the West End theatre production of Madness of Valencia at Trafalgar Studios, directed by Simon Evans. On screen, Fuller has worked opposite Robert Loggia, Sally Kirkland, Max Cullen, Asher Keddy, Jack McGee, Lucky Davies, and Barry Primus. His work as actor has been acknowledged by critics and film festivals and was tapped as finalist in the Health Leisure Scholarship. Lead roles in the further notable festival shots include Mother and Brother, Nocturnal Silence, Five Families, and Echoes of You. As a writer-producer, his first film, Possessions, was produced by ABC Australia. His most recent spec screenplay is about his late father, the art critic Peter Fuller. Modern Art has won awards and placed as a finalist in 30 of screenwriting competitions so far in last year. Laurence Fuller of Road to the Well, Paint It Red stars Echoes of You as classical pianist struggling to make his mark who finds his greatest fulfillment in unlikely places. This is a very lovely short film that builds to an emotional ending that will hit you hard. This critique was by Alex Billington, first showing uh, review for Echoes of You. The following is by Ruthless Reviews, review for Road to Well. Frank was played brilliantly by Laurence Fuller. Beneath the dossy exterior, there is smoldering anger and ruthlessness that only surfaces after a series of calamitous events. This film was good. I'm I'm talking about Alfred Hitchcock and Coen brothers good. This following review is by Time Out, a review of Madness in Valencia. Laurence Fuller is a faultless Pisano. Following is by Blacklist coverage for Modern Art. Modern Art shows a solid control for craft with powerful twists, memorable introductions to character, and effect use of planting and payoff. So, Lawrence, welcome to Rocklaz Radio. It's great to have you today. I'd been looking forward to this.
Thank you for that wonderful and long introduction. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here talking to you.
Awesome. So, as I was doing my research, I was going to ask you, how did you start your journey? And then I stumbled upon information that Peter Fuller, your father was a art and a movie critic. Also, he wrote into magazines. So I'm sure he has had an influence. But how how was your journey growing up and becoming what you are today?
Yeah, so my late father, Peter Fuller, he was an art critic, and you know, his writings was very niche for his time as well. You know, he was trying to reach a popular audience in that he would write for the Sunday Telegraph and he wrote for magazines, but the subject matter that he was talking about, sort of art history and the contemporary art scene in England at the time, you know, by the standards of popular culture and the media, of what we consider today to be a large reach, his was quite niche. And because of that, I think he was able to actually go into depth about art and culture and things, and in a way that is hard to do otherwise. So it was great to learn about that and sort of get into the substance of what culture is about, really. But I didn't really start reading his writing seriously until I was late 20s, because I guess it's so dense. I started my own love for the arts in cinema. You know, I really loved, you know, even I'm thinking of my childhood movies and like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and, you know, things which were just sort of adventures, and had a lot of imagination in them. Because I suppose that was sort of the ethos of growing up in an artistic house, was just sort of loving your imagination and creativity for its own sake. And of course, like, the road to becoming an artist professionally is really something that you have to, you know, learn. I came across again this quote by Stella Adler, who was my favorite like dramatist recently. She taught a lot of actors, and the quote was, "To be an artist, you have to have the soul of a rose and the hide of a rhinoceros." You know, so
Wow.
it took me like 2 years to get into drama school, just auditioning for drama school to get the training, because I wanted to get the training. You know, I didn't just want to go in and go to work on films and TV without that. So many of my favorite actors, like Daniel Day-Lewis and Robert De Niro, and I guess the leading men of like the 90s and also of the 20th century, they all had their foundations in like sort of classical theater training, but most, you know, theater training nonetheless. And I got to the final rounds of RADA, and then I just missed out on that. And then I was kind of traveling around with my uncle for a long time, who was a stand-up comedian in my year. Yeah, in my year off, I guess, between schooling and drama school, I was like trying to find myself, and my uncle was like, "Well, come on the road with me." You know, he had a really interesting life and he needed help, you know, as like an assistant to sell his albums, his stand-up comedy albums after the show. So I got to learn that sort of experience, like see what it was like living as a live performer, going on the road with him. And I became sort of the butt of his jokes in the center of his show for like a year. You know, it's pretty fun. It was a great theatrical experience. And then I got into the drama school I wanted to the next year, so I could focus on the classics and practicing my own craft as an actor and learning how to do Shakespeare, and working with like a lot of the old sort of dames and just bastions of the theatre in British theatre. You know, people who worked with Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theatre and like the Shakespeare's Globe, and getting to learn from them how they do their craft really informed like, I think in large part, where my, what evolved into my art and my poetry and my understanding of acting as well. Because it's really hard to fake Shakespeare well. There's people who fake Shakespeare, but you can tell right away that there's something kind of, it's a bit much or something. It's very easily too much. So to find an authentic Shakespearean performance really takes having to go there and use one's imagination to the fullest. And I think practicing contemporary techniques the same that they use in film. And, I was really interested in the way like method acting and Lee Strasberg and, the New York school of acting and contemporary acting came about as well, just as much as the Shakespeare. And I think that's always been a sort of informed my thinking as well. Like, what about the past is worth preserving in the present, and how to contemporize old ways of storytelling. And I've just spoken for about 20 minutes. So.
Just like storytelling from the past, you are also into art. So even what art from the back we can preserve and do a new version of that. I'm curious about that. Visual art. And of course, you're doing a great job of that. You're displaying those visual arts as well as a voiceover from a old poem and combining those to create a NFT. So how does that come about? How do you collab with, or are you an visual artist as well? So how did you come up with those NFTs?
Well, I've started learning the digital art techniques more recently, but none of the paintings that feature in any of my pieces are mine. I'll collaborate with contemporary artists, and, obviously we split it 50-50, and I find a way to animate the piece. Or if I'm working with Tanya Revillas, she really likes to animate her own pieces, because I think that's also something she wants to, evolve in her own solo work. But for many of the painters that I've worked with, I animate the piece using GAN techniques, using AI, and also video footage, and kind of blending those together to find I look for the cinematic in a painting, what would make a good film scene, and then contribute the performance to it. And nearly all of the contemporary painters I've worked with, when I've collaborated with them, it's been my own poetry as well, my own writing. I did have an idea for a collection on Tezos early on, where I adapted classic paintings, found different ways of animating them with different techniques, digital techniques, sometimes motion capture if it was like a portrait, and video footage, and then using classic poems that were in public domain. And I guess that was very much taking from my training in the theater classics, because I was like, well, how can we make this theatrical? How can a theater actor bring their craft to digital art? And it also came out of my favorite poet is Baudelaire, even though his writings are much better in French. But he was also an art critic, and he would write about paintings in his poetry all the time. Like the Correspondences is this really long poem about Goya and Delacroix and Rubens. And it really made me think that if he had the technology, that he would have also done the same. He would want to sort of have the poetry inhabit the painting and have them work together and speak with a voice. And, it's not really relevant in the physical world to need to do that. A painting speaks for itself on the wall and with its physical presence. But in the digital realm, it works wonderfully. It gives it a life. It gives it movement in a way that you couldn't have in the physical world, that could only exist in the digital world, and has that sort of esoteric sort of memory value that like a film has, because cinema is never physical. It's screened on a television or a big screen, and the value of it is fleeting. It's for however long the film lasts. And with short videos, of course, poetry works perfectly in that same way. And online, it can take on a virability effect. It can take on a viral effect, because that was the purpose of poetry in the world, for hundreds of years, was for poetry to reach like a very wide audience, and for like someone who's never read a book before to be able to learn a poem and to carry that with them as they go through life.
You said poetry had an effect of reaching out to the wider audience, and you also mentioned about Shakespearean works and art. But I have a problem with that. The Shakespearean English is, of course, we are all Commonwealth nations and speak English as second or third language. But Shakespearean English it's kind of tough because it's not the language we speak in day to day. So, is there a way, or would you like to do a couple of things in future where you can simplify that language but have the same emotions and thoughts and put that in a modern work?
Yeah, absolutely. I've experimented with a couple Shakespeare NFTs, but I do absolutely have plans for, like you say, to make that even more accessible, and imaginative and wild, and in the life of digital art. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but one thing I'm working with. There's a couple things, actually. There's one, I'm working with a 3D artist, a brilliant 3D artist, one of the best in the space, on a motion capture performance of Shakespeare. And then he's putting it into his world. And, it looks as good as any film I've seen, in terms of special effects. And you have that sort of like spectacle that like a studio film would give the audience, but also the depth of Shakespeare. And I think, other than that, and that would be a monologue, but other than that, I think I'm also working with a painter who's figured out some interesting GAN techniques, that combining video footage with GAN. And so
that sounds exciting. Do you also, it'll be awesome, I'm excited for that. But do you plan to simplify that English language used by Shakespeare into modern language and then put that on it? So I think it'll be more accessible to many, many more people, and just
sorry.
have the full effect of that work.
Yeah, because I mean, contemporizing Shakespeare's like a problem that a lot of the actors I really look up to and the dramatists I look up to, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart and Ray Fiennes, have all taken on Shakespeare adaptations in cinema. But yeah, they haven't really contemporized the language as much. There's been some films that have attempted, like I think the film O with Josh Hartnett a while back was an Othello adaptation. And sometimes like you won't even realize that you're watching a Shakespeare adaptation, but that was the purpose of a script. But yeah, I mean, definitely my own poetry is heavily inspired by Shakespeare and the Romantics. I've never attempted a direct adaptation, but that would be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be awesome. So, could you recite a poem for us?
Yeah, sure. Let me just get up. Let me get it right. Do you want, like, my favorite poem is Jerusalem by Blake. Do you want that or one of my own?
Both. Let's hear both.
Okay. So this is the second part of Jerusalem by Blake. Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land.
Wow.
Yeah, I love I love the sort of the power and the passion in that. And I did an adaptation of Jerusalem in a piece called Colossus Wonders Paradise. And the reading of that for that NFT was performed live as well for Beats live event. And then we cut it like straight into the NFT. Like I had to like perform it, and then it was all happening live, and then cut it, put it to the piece, and then mint it. Like it was fun to juggle. Let me get up.
So what is the name of the NFT that was made out of that?
Colossus Wonders Paradise. Okay, and now I can get up. Why didn't I get up? I can get up one I haven't minted yet. Would that be interesting?
Absolutely. Is this the first time public is going to get to hear this?
Yeah, this is the first time. This is for a collaboration with one of the best dark artists in the space.
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you of a forest, in the darkest quarries, in the shadows of heroes, fallen warriors buried beneath the trees, harmonies heard from a chorus of birds, their gravestones an army of trees, where each fold of its root a word covered in wood, the 7 sins dug as deep as they could. Voices around a crackling fire rose in the smoke that made the whole wood exhale and choke, like a flurry of locusts had gained possession of an old English as they spoke, the most feverish pitch in the valley of the witch. And then it goes on. That was half of it. I'm not going to give the whole thing. How's that? I'll just give the first half. Is that okay?
So what inspired this one?
Well, I guess I can tell you that Dolce. I don't want to say her last name incorrectly, because I've never said it out loud before. So let me just get up. So the artist inspired, and her name is Dolce Pagani. Dolce Pagani. And I mean, if you look at her art, it's really twisted, sort of dark imagination with a lot of like gothic themes you can see inspired by like Edgar Allan Poe and probably a lot of Victorian literature, Brothers Grimm, sort of dark fairy tales. And much like I was sort of talking about the films of my childhood, Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and you know, I love dark fairy tales, because fairy tales were originally all very dark. Like Brothers Grimm, the whole book is actually quite terrifying, like The Little Mermaid and things like that. They're actually quite scary stories and fables. So her art, it really just inspired the this idea of the Valley of the Witch. And I wrote that and sent it to her, and she's sketching it at the moment, what it's going to look like. And I think she's animating it. And yeah, I'm excited for that. That's coming soon.
Exciting. I want to search that and put those links in the description as well. So you mentioned those fairy tales were dark. So what kind of dark? Like torture and death or something even? What?
Well, I don't know. I think it's the. I mean, Brothers Grimm did have all sorts of things, yeah. But I think, when it comes to that sort of darkness in fine art and painting, if you walk through a museum, you'll see some things that sort of elicit the imagination and just sort of touch on like things that are slightly scary, but not like gory, like a fawn or something like that, with the goat legs and the horns, like coming out and being dragged away by nymphs or them like checking out some nymphs, and then cupids like messing around, and all sorts of sort of creatures, and heaven and hell sort of at battle and one with each other. A lot of those epic poems were taken from religious iconography, Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno were sort of explorations of the other side of the Bible, what that looked like. What did hell look like? So I think there's a mischievous part of our nature that enjoys exploring those things. And
Dante's
for
Inferno.
us,
Dante's Inferno was in a movie as well, right? Da Vinci Code or something. They From that it was drawn, and it was an amazing movie.
yeah, absolutely. And Da Vinci Code. I mean, Da Vinci Code really touches on how in Renaissance times, and I guess everything sort of pre-Raphaelite was like classic paintings had a lot of religious iconography in them. And part of the fun, I think, about classic artworks are the secret language of the images and the symbols within even like a still life, and figuring out those clues are like a mystery and can take you on a journey, like the Da Vinci Code for your own life. Definitely a big part of my attraction to wanting to work with fine art was the secret language of the images.
When I saw that you have a film, Apostle Peter and the Last Supper, I saw its trailer, but that just quickly caught my attention because a couple of weeks back there was the Good Friday, and I didn't know much about what is Good Friday about. And uh, previous host on the podcast were saying like UK has 1 or 2 weeks of holiday for Good Friday. So of course I knew what is Christmas, and that's the main festival for the Christians. But Good Friday, I went ahead and searched about it. So that was related to crucifixion of Jesus, and then his and so I tried to search more about it, and then I went into the history of what record has been kept, and Peter, and how all these things have come about to be. So Peter, and I just love the trailer, and I'm looking forward to watch that whole movie. And that quote where he says, "I am not chained, you are." That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually my first lead role in a film. It was my first feature film ever. And I think the first role I booked when I got to LA about 10 years ago. And it was a Christian movie, of course. I had no idea I'd be working with Robert Loggia, who was just a classic character actor. He made many brilliant movies like Scarface and Independence Day and Big, and it was his definitely his last lead role in a film, and I think he made just one appearance again after that. And So truly an honor to just be a part of that man's journey in any way. I'm not religious myself, but I mean, I'm really interested in the storytelling and basically the storytelling. I mean, and the human struggle within all that. And it's just an interesting thing now that, there's millions of people that will watch me go through that journey every year around Christmas and Easter. It's kind of interesting. Like every Christmas, there'll be some tweets that pop up about me in this movie, and then I don't know, people watch it at Sunday school, and there's a huge market for Christian movies. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
And what fascinates me about the writing as well is, or just how religions evolve. There is a person or there is a group initially, but then there are so many other people who add on to the story, and they're affected by it, and they influence each other, and how that evolves. And now in the contemporary time, as you are uh, portraying that same story with your emotions and your expressions, and the writer's thought on that, trying to correlate it with the current audience, that is just so fascinating to me. What do you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's really quite something to wrap your head around, isn't it? Yeah, it's religion is much like a culture, and it starts small, and it can spread based on the quality of the story. Yeah.
And I was watching this one, Echoes of You, before this, and as you mentioned your relation about father and the son, that sort of thing is also mentioned, the best seat in the hall. And I don't want to disclose that. I wish everyone watches that film. So I just loved the expression. There are so many micro expressions apart from the main actor. I mean, the viewer cannot express, okay, pinpoint and look and I say like this or like that, but it just gives you such a good feeling, right? It's such a feel good short film. I just loved it. So
Oh
hats
man,
off to you.
there's so much hope in that little short, isn't there? Like
Yeah.
it was really a moving script. When the director sent it to me, he was a friend of mine, and he was like, I want you to play this part. I read it, and I like burst into tears by the end of it. I was like, this is beautiful. What a great story, and then so we had, it was one of those films we had to shoot all the stuff in the theater. They only had the theater for a day, so we had to shoot that all in a day. And those big moments at the end, in your mind you think you're going to have okay, I'll have all day for this one moment, but in reality you have 2 takes at it or something like that. But I think they did a great job with the makeup, and the end effect turned out great. I mean that is a great film to share whenever it feels like the world needs a little bit more hope. So maybe I should share it again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, you must. So even the details, like the syringes next to the boy's mother, and the the whole shot, it was so interesting. I mean, that janitor working and getting rejected again and again, and then fast forward to 20 years, and he's still a janitor. And then the person who has helped him, or the child, has grown up, and wow, it gives him a surprise of the best seat in the hall. And it was so epic, that whole moment. It's so fascinating that you can have such a roller coaster of emotion in such a short time. You don't need to watch a full 2 hour or 3 hour movie. What
Yeah,
do you think?
you're right. Well, if they, if you're right, I guess it's like a piece of poetry, isn't it?
Yeah,
If
yes,
you tell
yes,
it just
yes.
right. Yeah,
Absolutely. So how how do you accept or reject scripts that you get, or how do you decide which ones to do?
I mean, mostly it's like, mostly I think as you develop like an acting reel and people get to know who you are and you start to do some jobs, that's sort of who you become as an actor, and people will approach you with the sort of scripts that they think you're right for. So you kind of define that as you go, like, and then the scripts and the jobs that you get are kind of in line with that. Because I tend to only really get the stuff that I really want to do anyway. And I tend not to be in the position where, oh, I don't want to do this. So yeah, I guess it's fortunate in that way. I think if you just really are passionate about what you do and believe in whatever it is that you do, then people will see that and they'll understand it, and you'll communicate, okay, this person they're great for this sort of thing. Yeah, I really think that's the best.
From the trailers I watched, most of the movies seem to be very serious, but you have spent so much time traveling with your uncle in the stand-up comedy scene. So do you plan to do comedy? Or would you like to?
I mean, a certain kind of comedy. I don't know if I'm, there's funnier people than me, but I definitely appreciate the craft, and like I love like absurd humor and like British humor, and yeah, I do love absurd humor. I mean, the piece I just did with Minx and HBO is kind of comedy, I would say. It's like dramedy, it would be hard to categorize it as just a drama or just a comedy, but that's probably the lightest thing that I've done. Yeah, I guess I've just got like that brooding like intensity of like, let's go on some dark journey.
So can we do one thing, like can we as you have been to the theater school and all these things, so can you tell a statement with different emotions? Same statement, but with different emotions.
You want me to do that?
Yeah. That would be really interesting.
Let's go. Let's do Jerusalem. Bring me my bow of burning gold. What else should I do it? Like, how else should I do it?
So maybe something serious, some angry.
We're doing live acting coaching here. Okay,
so angry, comedy, fearful. I don't know. You will know more emotions than I can count.
Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my bow of burning gold. Like that. It was saying yearning and sorrowful.
Mm-hmm.
What next?
Comedy.
But how do you do that? Well, the thing with comedy, I think you've got to like find the truth in it. Why would it be funny? Would you bring me my bow of burning gold? Someone doesn't have their bow of burning gold.
Yeah, that went well.
You're supposed to. This is what they pay me for,
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to call my agent.
So how do you do it? What do you visualize, or how there's something between reading and then there is? How do you do it? I
Well, I suppose with the last one, I thought it would be funny to see someone struggling with the fact that they don't have their bow, and that's really frustrating to them. And I think that would just be like the humor would just come out of genuinely just watching someone be frustrated that they don't have a bow. And I think the sorrowful one just came from really imagining the loss of this bow, and I guess the despair of not having it, and maybe almost the giving up of feeling like he's never going to get the bow again, which could also be funny. But that was the sorrowful one. And I think it sort of, if you think, okay, bring me my bow of burning gold is myself, is a man, myself, desiring a bow of burning gold, and how much he thinks who is he talking to bring it to him, I think in the way that it's written, Blake means it in a way that this guy's he asked for the bow of burning gold, he's gonna get it. So when he says it with the confidence that it's gonna come to him. So bring me my bow of burning gold. It's like he's talking to his assistant or somebody who carries his bow for him, for the purpose of, going to battle for England, and in the some sort of battle with the gods in a way. So there's a lot in that line, I think, that feeds the imagination. And you're right, it can be done 100 different ways. It's just about how you imagine what the scenario is, really. Why does this man want this bow? And who is he talking to? And what is he going to do with it?
So, how about bring me my bow of burning gold, because I want to sell that as NFT.
Bring me my bow of burning gold. You gotta sell it. No, I mean, to sell that as an NFT, I think you just need a good story. It's like anything. I don't think it's any different to performing in a film or a theater or anything. You just want a really good story, don't you? You just want excitement and to be taken on a journey.
One thing I really appreciate actors is about crying, especially the male actors, because it is really, really difficult to cry, even when you feel like crying. For most of the men in our society, where we are said we need to be strong, and girls cry, and it's not the guys who cry, you need to suck it up and live with it, whatever, and so on and so forth. So, how do you do it?
How do you cry? Well, in the film Echoes of You, it was just about thinking about how proud I was of the kid, and how much I would have wanted that from the people who were no longer in my life, because that was the man's story as well. He wanted his father to be sat in that seat, and it was fulfilling this thing, this desire that was a deep emotional one that could never be satisfied, and in that moment he got to have it. So it was about imagining that same situation for myself, imagining the people I would want from my life who I would want to be sat where I was sitting, watching me play the piano on that stage. And so you've got to find that, whatever that is for you. And I spent sort of years sort of wrestling with. You can spend a long time wrestling with, like, trying to force emotions when you're trying to discover acting, even the real ones that are you're trying to relive memories or something like that. But then I think after you do it so many times, where you're imagining how a scenario might affect you and what are the things that really affect you in your life, and sort of applying those to the script, to where it does become a bit more seen. You do get more used to it, and it does become a bit more relaxed, because the only way to get to a vulnerable emotion, to the point where you are crying, because crying is not an emotion, it's a symptom of emotion. But the only way to get to a vulnerable place is to be relaxed, and to be, to just focus on what it is that you're doing, and to prepare in the right way. And sometimes the other actors around you can help as well, if they're really into it and really good too. Quite often.
Is crying as contagious as laughter? So, like, if others are crying around you, would you cry?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, focused. And if people are really focused and engaged in the scene that you're opposite, then you really believe it, I think, 10 times more. Yeah, definitely.
Do you cry out loud off screen, like actual tears, and do you let the emotions flow, or do you hold it up in your personal life?
Wait, do I? Oh, in my personal life, am I, like, emotional? I hope
not emotional. I mean, my question is, do you, like, there are some people who will just have a poker face all the time, even if they're feeling happy, or even if they're feeling angry, or they feel like crying. They hold on to the emotions. They don't let it flow. So that was an extreme example. But even in normal people, they cannot let the emotion of crying or sorrow, it doesn't flow naturally. So in how do you deal with it? Do you let them flow, or do you hold it for releasing it at some other time?
It's really tough, because I think people expect, when they know you're an actor, they expect you to be emotional. But so you also have to contend with that, which is like another layer of artifice in a way. And people, like, sort of, expecting you to be emotional because they've seen it in a movie, like in Road to the Well. I'm like blowing up and being all crazy and stuff. But yeah, no, you probably wouldn't see that. And you'd have to know me really well to one day see me, like, lose my shit, because I'm pretty professional most of the time. I mean, I think good humor is a great way of getting through life and getting to know people. So probably more likely to see me be humorous or talking about, the imagination and poetry and art. That's probably what people mostly get out of me. But I think, because you deal with a lot of people, like in the film industry, and it takes like 500 people to make a film. So you can't really be like a burden, If you sort of are too difficult, then you get fired and people don't want to work with you. That's not good. Same in theater, same in television, and in the NFT space, everybody's online and interconnected all the time, right? So to keep it professional as much as possible, and avoid drama. So yeah, probably I would save the drama for people who are really close to me, and not be really dramatic. And I mean, professionalism is the best way to go, because it's more sustaining for your friendships and relationships as well, isn't it? If someone's too much drama, you just don't want to deal with it anymore, right? So
that you said about audience looking at the actor on screen and having a concept of that actor in that same way. So many of the villains in the films or in the TV series have a tough job coming out and dealing with the audience, right? And the same way, the lead actors or the protagonist will be all famous and all celebrated like maybe like a god or something by audience. How you see all the actors up close, or you also have seen those reactions. So how do you deal with it?
I think it's lovely. I've been stopped in the street and by Uber drivers and obviously in Twitter Spaces, and it's just really nice if somebody recognizes something you've done and compliments you. I think it's just about receiving a nice compliment. I haven't really experienced any sort of weirdness about it yet, because probably I'm not as famous as superhero movie actor. They probably have to deal with a lot more than I have on that regard. So it's been all right.
India is crazy about movies. I think we produce the most movies compared to any other country, because it's not just one language, right? I think over 1,000 movies are produced over a year. So it's not just one language. There are several languages. So there are several, what do you say, movies or genres and languages film coming out. So the Bollywood is quite famous. Everyone knows Bollywood. That's for the Hindi. But there is also Tollywood, Collywood, and something more woods like that. They are not real places, but it is just the whole scene of films just called that. So one is for Tamil, one is for Telugu, and there is for Malayalam. There are other houses like that. Have you seen Indian films?
Yeah, I was in India, a Bollywood film called The Black Russian. But in terms of like the big Indian movies, like Monsoon Wedding, classic, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I guess embarrassed to admit, it's mostly the ones that make it to our shore, or that that make it to the cinema out here, or made by British filmmakers like Slumdog Millionaire was. But I know that's not authentic Indian cinema. Probably the best one I know is Monsoon Wedding, but yeah, I have seen some.
Yeah. So this doesn't happen now, or I'm not sure if it happens in a very small thing, but 10-20 years back, villains of the movies wouldn't get a house to rent in Mumbai or places like that.
Wow.
So people people get involved in that character so much that living becomes difficult for them, and then they have to do something else or work around with their agents and collectors to get a place to live or to even eat. And other side of it is Hinduism has got a lot of gods, and Ramayan was the first portrayal of TV series portrayal of from the religious epic, the book of Ramayan. So it was such a hit in 1980s. whenever those people used to come and walk around, people used to just bow down and just lie flat on the floor to pay respects to them, or the whole crowd used to gather and it celebrate them as gods. So the lead actor was telling his story on one of the shows. He was a chronic smoker. He used to keep smoking always, and he was telling the story of how he stopped. He was back of the theater, and the producer or somebody from that stage came up to him and he said, people look up to you as god, and you're doing this. So he just went to a shock about that, and he just quit from that moment itself.
Wow. And what a great responsibility, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of you do take on a lot, I suppose, of public exposure, but also by being any form of public figure, at least as an actor, you get to mask yourself with the character. You know, I'd hate to be a politician or something like that. That would be worse. But to be, you know, with acting, it's all play, it's all imagination, and we can go anywhere. We can be the darkest villain, or we can be like, you know, some angel. But it's all at the end of it, imagination and storytelling. There's no harm
As you
in
mentioned,
that.
yeah, it's a responsibility, isn't it? Yeah. And the good part about these days is you can be your own self also through social media like Twitter, where we met, or Instagram. You can put out your own reels or get in touch directly with the audience and talk on those spaces or on a podcast like this. And so people get to know you as a real person and not just the mask of yours from the movies. What?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, you know, all my social media is like about poetry and art and films, and that's basically what I sort of drench my life in anyway. And but my girlfriend's also an actress. She's not here at the moment, but because she's in Vegas with her parents. So I have gotten her into a couple of the collaborations, the art and poetry collaborations. You'll hear her voice in a few of them. And she comes into the Twitter spaces sometimes.
Oh,
So,
interesting. What is her name?
Yeah. Cynthia San Luis is her name. And she's a Filipino actress who is also classically trained and loves Shakespeare as much as I do. So
Very interesting. So, do you plan to make a home film together on something like it could be a short film,
yeah,
but home produced?
Yeah, I mean, I think the poetry and art pieces are kind of like that, but maybe with something. I mean, I think whatever I put out, I want it to be of good production values. So would have to. Yeah, I mean, yeah, at some point we'll do a short film or something. Yeah.
So you mentioned a good production value. Do you? How do you? What do you think about a quote which somebody had said that perfection is the enemy of progress? So, what do you think?
Perfection is the enemy of progress. I think it's a balance. I think that, you know, there's plenty of scrap bits of readings and things like that the world will never see that I have on my computer. I think, of course, you should experiment and play when you're in private. You know, when this is my study, right? This is my mic that I record with. I spend all day in here playing with poetry and readings and performances and music, and and different ways of animating things. But what you see is what I choose at the end of it, what I select. Okay, this is what I want for the final piece to put out there. So yeah, absolutely play and create and be free, and then refine for what you want to finish the finished piece. Refine the finished piece. That's what the world sees at the end. Maybe when I die, someone will come in and look at all my scrapbooks and things like that. But while I'm alive, this is, you're just getting the hopefully the finished pieces that are polished and what I want them to be. I think there's some stuff, of course, that looking back that I would redo now, but not too much actually.
You can do one thing about people coming and getting to see your other works. You can put it on IPFS or some global network like that. You can write it in your will that you want this to be done, and then the whole world will have access to all your works.
That's a great idea. That actually, my mother, who is an artist, is using the blockchain in that way. She's like minting her whole catalog, raisonné, like all her watercolors and sketches and paintings and just sort of everything. For the years, and she says she's doing it for me to catalog all her artwork, which is after she dies.
Wow. I was going to ask you about your mother as we talked about uncle and father. So could you tell us more about your mother? How much time did you get to spend with her? Do you have any siblings?
My mother I speak to regularly because we have the art connection. I mean, she's out in the NFT space as well. We're online. It's been a great way for us to stay connected more, actually.
What is her name?
Steph Fuller. STEFFULLER.
Got it.
Yeah, she has been one of the best-selling artists on Solana so far. I know now a lot more people are coming in, but she was one of the first fine artists on Solana. So yeah, she's a painter now. She was a sculptor, and having that connection through the art world has been really helpful for us to be in touch, and sort of have that connection. I think is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I have a half sister as well on my father's side, so we don't speak as often as I'd like because my father passed away when I was young. So, but we do speak, and I really enjoy speaking to her. She lives in England.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you grew up more in Australia or in England?
I would say it's probably equal parts in terms of time, but I identify more with my British side. I think as I grew up, more and more, I was born in England in my first 7 years there, and then I did some high school in Australia, and then went back to England. So, yeah, I would identify more with my British side, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But there's parts of my Australian side that come out, like the sporty nation. Australians are great at sport.
Absolutely.
And that really sort of, I was very sporty all up until lockdown. I was like extremely fit. I was like in my prime fitness at about 30, early 30s. And then lockdown happened and I just stopped working out for the last year and a half. I could get back into it, but.
So what sports did you play, or do you play?
I was doing Muay Thai like 5 times a week, kickboxing.
Oh, wow.
And absolutely loved Muay Thai, and actually can't wait to get back into it. But that was such a great adventure. And I trained at King's, so it would be like rolling out of bed, putting on my Muay Thai pads and my gloves was a morning ritual, and then running around this mat, and then doing a few combinations, and then after about 10 minutes, before you know it, you're standing in front of someone, like sparring with them in a fight. It was amazing, but there was no like emotion to it. It was just like, we're fighting, and it was excitement. But even when you get hit, it's just sort of like, and then you're back at it, and you're like, I don't know. There's something to when you get hit that often, where it doesn't feel, there's no emotional content to it. Like it doesn't feel shocking. It doesn't feel frustrating. It's just sort of like part of your morning. It's good to get that way.
What about taking that as a metaphor for like real life things?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, like that, it's actually the easiest. Once you like get hit a few times, I think it's the easiest hit that you could possibly take. Yeah.
It reminds me of the Rocky quote. It's not about how hard you can hit, or it's all about how hard you can get hit and still keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great quote, isn't it? How hard you can get hit and keep going. What is that? Is that in the remake or the sequels?
Yeah,
like
it's in the sequels. Yes. He's telling that to his son.
Yeah. That's a great quote. How hard you can get hit. I think that's for sure. That's a lot of truth, isn't it? Because no matter what big event happens, you still got to wake up in the morning. There's always tomorrow.
There is always tomorrow. Yeah. What are your favorite films? We're talking about Rocky, so that I thought let us know about your favorite films, as you're also an actor.
Yeah, I love Scorsese movies. I love Silence, Casino, Goodfellas. I love Ridley Scott movies too. Probably Gladiator and Kingdom of Heaven and the worlds that he's able to create. And he actually trained as an artist at St. Martin's. You can tell in his like sweeping shots and stuff that he draws and paints out a lot of his films before they start shooting. So I love the imagination in his work. And I work with a 3D artist called Cop Geldeston, and some of the pieces that we've been able to create, I think, have come close to a Ridley Scott aesthetic of like how to, like in terms of the cinematography and lighting, a classic subject. So it's like how to bring to life a classic piece in with modern cinematography and special effects. And it's possible with painting too, of course. Of course, you got to work with the best painters of the day, like Heinrich Dahlin and Tanya Villas or Dolce, but it's possible. So yeah, I love that. I love exploring new. Whenever like the best of European cinema sort of spikes through the zeitgeist, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire and things like that. And
I got to check that out.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a good movie, and anything that Vincent Cassel is in. I'm working with an actor at the moment, who is absolutely a hero of mine, on a project that you guys will see soon. when does this podcast come out?
In 24 hours?
Okay, so yeah, so I can't really say too much, but he's worked with the likes of Stanley Kubrick, and just when I think about that, just being a part of even, working with someone who's been a part of a legacy like Stanley Kubrick's is like just like you're touching like a piece of history. It's like, collecting like a Da Vinci or something like that. I really feel it's like on that level. And because I think every film that Kubrick did was a masterpiece, even Eyes Wide Shut and Barry Lyndon and 2001. And, I really sort of gravitate to those directors that what they're, they're the artists. So what they're creating in their vision is like a piece of history that will just last the test of time. So anything by Kubrick, Ridley Scott, Scorsese, is got to be in my favorites.
So do you plan, and what about the TV series?
TV is getting better and better. I mean, as the world is going in the direction that it is. The Offer just came out. It's actually one of my favorite shows I've ever seen, which is about the making of The Godfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just
That's
came
one
out.
of my favorite films.
Right, exactly. And the making of it, there was actually a lot of real life gangster stuff going on behind the scenes during the time Mario Puzo was writing it, because it was based on the real people, obviously. And they knew Mario. And I didn't know the producers were somewhat, nefarious and involved in mafia dealings. And so it was a fascinating bit of history. And obviously you get to see the Brando in it, and you get to see the actors. The Pacino is amazing, Pacino impersonation. And I mean, it goes beyond impersonation at that point. But it's like a 10-hour movie, it's really great. And Giovanni Ribisi and Miles Teller are fantastic actors. So yeah, it really is like a 10-hour movie.
And when is it coming out?
That one just came out. It's Paramount Plus, that one. I mean, I was just on this HBO show called Minx. I don't know if you managed to catch that one. So Minx is about this magazine in the 70s, which was the first Playgirl. And it's very much like Boogie Nights for women, in that it's a magazine about the first Playgirl. So it started off like a feminist magazine, and then she sort of partnered up with this pornographer who was this wheeler and dealer, and was like, well, why don't we give the ladies a bit of something, to look at? And then you weave in your feminist agenda in that. So it added like a lot of glamour and naughtiness and sex, obviously, to the like feminist agenda that they had. And really fun watch, I think. I think the whole cast was hilarious. The whole cast was hilarious on set. Like the energy was just really high when I got there. And the pacing of the show is just really well done. The writing of Mason Flink, who was also on set. I was really lucky that I had him there, because he was playing a role in the scene that I was in. Usually you don't really get to speak to the writer, but I think he wanted to be there as well because of the character that I was portraying in Minx, as David Hockney, who is still, he's one of the most expensive living painters, in that his painting sold for $90 million like a couple years ago. I think only surpassed by Puck. And so, he had that sort of gravitas to it, the fact that he achieved this high price, which I don't think he cares about. I think more of the interesting thing was that he was a cultural icon. And I think, I've even heard him say that in interviews. He doesn't really care if he's the most expensive or second or third or whatever. What he left was a cultural legacy. And the scene itself, he was so well known for his pool scenes in his paintings, Californian pools from the 70s. Like your mind just goes straight to David Hockney's paintings. And so the scene that we shot was set by a pool. And the whole introduction of the character, he's at a party with Hockney. And I kind of take him by the shoulder and we have a chat about minks. Because Hockney actually used to paint his male nudes. He used their magazine as a reference, or different ladies' magazines as references for the male nudes. And so he in real life really liked the magazine. So he's having a chat to the guy about the magazine as they're walking along this Californian pool and the sun is shining and the people in 70s dress around. It feels just like a Hockney painting. I think the whole crew did an incredible job of making it really authentic. And Hockney actually was kind of connected to my past in that he was a good friend of my late father. Because my late father was art critic at the time and Hockney was the most well-known British painter. So they would speak on a weekly basis on the phone. And my father interviewed him several times. Like if you look up on YouTube, Peter Fuller, David Hockney, the interview will come up on YouTube or online. Like there's a written one that's longer that I posted from one of his books. And their correspondences in his archive were like this whole box of letters that they had. Mm-hmm. So I had a ton to draw from in terms of research that I'd already been doing for different reasons. So it was almost just like they want you to play Hockney. Let's go. I'm ready. Give me the wig.
Yeah.
I was ready for this role. Yeah, and I'm really thankful that all that prepared me because I only had 2 weeks otherwise to prepare for it. So, but luckily I'd had like a lifetime to prepare for it. Yeah, apparently the only reason they hired me from the audition was because Ophelia Lovibond, who is the lead actress in the series, is actually British. She does an incredible job of hiding that because her character is American. And on set she could just switch between British and American like that. I have to stay in accents because I find it easier to do that, but she was just, and there's no way you can tell, like she sounds dead on American. But so they're looking through my audition tapes and I guess they choose like a handful of guys they like. And then they get Ophelia because she's British and they say, okay, Ophelia, we have no idea what a Yorkshire accent sounds like. Because David Hockney's Yorkshire is like a really specific British accent. We have no idea. We're American. We don't know. You tell us which of these 5 guys does the best Yorkshire accent. And she just happened to pick me.
Wow. So could you do that Yorkshire accent for us right away?
Oh, gosh. Yorkshire. David Hockney. I suppose he would talk a bit like this, really. When he was giving interviews about art, I suppose. I don't want to do too much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yorkshire to New York.
New York. Actually, you know what? New York is actually a little bit easier. New York, I think, obviously it would be better to sort of study it before I just start talking in a New York accent. But, I think I have more of it in my mind. There's more people that speaking a New York accent that you hear on a daily basis. So there's more of a memory bank to draw from,
Yes. Wow. Too cool. I really fond of the northern accent, like Scottish or northern British accent. That's completely different. Sometimes it's difficult to understand.
Oh, yeah.
But do you can you recall that accent or?
Scottish. Well, I think the thing about the Scottish accent is really getting the rolled R's, and also the way the Scottish pronounce their vowels is very specific, and it's also something you have to study. I think you can't just sort of learn it just from listening a few times. The Scottish accent is very specific.
Awesome. That was too cool.
That's difficult to be put on the spot, but it's better. It's better when I have a bit more time. But thank you for challenging.
Yeah, that was too cool. Especially the vowels and the times. It will be cool if I should spend some time in learning those British accent, because I think that's the international thing and everyone understands. Even more than British, everyone understands American, I guess, because of the media. They're influencing the culture around the world. So there was one. There's a good friend from Iran who said, "I don't understand Indian accent, but I only understand American accent." You should go and learn some American accent. I was like, cool, I will.
Yeah, we hear it so often from being international, don't we? Even everywhere on TV, right?
Mm-hmm. So, Lawrence, what is on your bucket list next?
Next would be working with Heinrich Dahlin on a big collection. Heinrich Dahlin, one of the most respected painters in the world, for good reason. He paints like a Baroque master. He paints as good as Bouguereau or any of the pre-Raphaelites. Paints as good as Rubens. Paints as good as anyone throughout art history. I defy you to put up a Heinrich Dahlin next to any of those painters and say otherwise. And his contemporary voice within that is just spot on. We're working together on a large collection, and it is obviously, if you know Heinrich's work, it's very dark, and my poetry and I don't think the NFT space has not seen anything like it. The art world has not seen anything like it. It's an exciting moment to be a part of that project, and so.
Wow, when could we get a glimpse of it, or when are we going to see the project itself?
It'll be out by the end of the year. It'll be out by the end of the year.
And which chain do you plan to publish it on? Because I see most of the work is on Tezos of yours. Is there a reason for that?
Actually, I had like 10 pieces when I started minting on. I put out about 10 pieces on OpenSea, and they sold. And I got on Foundation and sold some pieces on there. But I guess I came to Tezos because, the gas fee. I wanted to collect a lot of works as well, but also the environmental factor was a big reason. The environmental factor. I didn't want to put out like a lot of editions on ETH because of the environmental factor, but you could do that on Tezos. Not that I put out like large editions, but I think any number of editions really. And most of my audience is from the film world and the acting world. It's about 50-50 at this point, actually. So they care about that, and I care about that. So that was all those reasons, really. And then we sort of developed the culture and like found my people on there too. And but yeah, as time goes on, it's more and more cross chain. You know, I've got a featured drop on Exchange Art with Solana coming up, and I did some more work on Foundation with Tanya Ravillas, and so, and World of V as well, that we did a curated drop on there. That's on VeChain. So I think the future's cross chain, really.
Yep.
But yeah, for this collection, I think as it stands, we're looking at ETH.
Okay. Foundation or OpenSea or Super Rare?
It'll be OpenSea, and it'll be like a mint. Like people will have to mint it.
Okay.
It'll be a large collection.
Large as in 10,000? How large?
I can't say too much, but I mean, not more than 10,000. Yeah. But it absolutely warrants it. It's not generated. It's basically digital adaptations of Heinrich's portraits using GAN and AI, and they all look like Heinrich Dahlem portraits. It looks like 10,000 Heinrich Dahlem portraits, which is it is. And we have an orchestra that we're working with for the music.
Wow.
To get live original score, original poetry from myself and performance, and one or two movie stars as well as coming on board for some performances. Wow. And building out a metaverse as well with like a world. We want it to be like a full immersive experience, you know, like it's an art project, but it's also a story that we're taking people on, a journey.
That is going to be extraordinary. I would definitely want to be a part of this. So let me know whenever you plan to launch it. Of course, I'll get to know on Twitter, but yeah, looking forward to that.
Awesome. Absolutely well. Thank you, Tanmay.
That being asked, what are the 3 people, living or dead, you would like to have lunch with?
I would say Stanley Kubrick, my late father, and probably Caravaggio.
And why these 3? Have you chosen these 3?
Yeah, I think Stanley Kubrick, because he would just instigate. I think you could talk to Stanley Kubrick for hours and it would never not be interesting. And he would like poke and prod you in ways you'd never thought of before. My late father, because I never knew him really in person past the age of 3. So to know him as a man, and he wrote 15 books on art, and so he was definitely an interesting conversationalist. That apparently he would speak on the phone for hours with people. So I think, he would have been an amazing chat. Caravaggio, for a very different reason, because Caravaggio was all heart. He was all gut. He was all visionary and rebellious, and was notably quite a difficult person, but one of those fascinating rebels. He would have made a great like movie star or something. He just charismatic and just rogue genius, and maybe he would be a really bad dinner companion, but just to meet him and experience what he had to offer, I think would be great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
How was your feeling? How did you feel when you read your father's books or articles, magazines?
Um, I feel really engaged in what he's talking about. I think, he had a way of being passionate about art that was extremely engaging for people who didn't even know him, about topics that were otherwise really dense and otherwise very cerebral and otherwise perhaps maybe even academic. He found a way of making them extremely sort of visceral and personal, and give a lot of personal meaning to each individual's existence. How a painting can actually fit into a moment of your life is what he was after, and how painting and art can enrich literally anyone's life, no matter what their circumstances, no matter what's going on with them. That culture is free. Culture is there for anybody to pick up and to take in for what it truly means. And that was all his mission. And so it makes me feel like, like there's a purpose there. Mm-hmm.
Wow. He would have made a good podcaster with all his thoughts. What do you think?
He would have been a great podcaster, yeah.
So do you plan to do that? Read out his books or maybe your own thoughts into a podcast?
I like doing Twitter Spaces all the time. I like the nature of Twitter Spaces because it feels like you're all getting together for a chat, and then you have all these people listening in. So yeah, you can see me in Twitter Spaces quite often.
And so you could just record that and publish, so it could just leave a legacy or just keep being there for people also to be heard who are not on Twitter or
yeah. I mean, the
after some
interesting
time, because Twitter the recording gets expired in a month or so.
Good idea. I have done that with a couple spaces, but I should do that more often. Maybe I should do that now. But it stays in your Twitter data, doesn't it? That you can download it.
They don't save it for a long time. It is just for 1 month or 3 months. I need to check the update, but it's just there for that much, and then it's gone. So you can keep taking backups on your cloud or drive or hard drives, and then so you can take monthly backups on your own, and then let Twitter do whatever they want.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do that now.
So, Peter Fuller Project, that is something I had read. What is that about?
Peter Fuller was my late father, so I've been writing a screenplay about him. Maybe. Writing a screenplay about him for a long time, and it is the story that I learned from his letters and his journals and the writing that I found in the archive at the Tate when I went to digitize it, which is a story of contemporary art, particularly in England, from the late 60s to 1990, and his journey of navigating through it and talking to these figures who were central in the art world every day. Letters, interviews, correspondences, and taking out of that, I guess, a story. He led a fascinating life, and his relationships were probably the most fascinating part of it. His relationships with these people who were, foremost thinkers of their day, creative, artistic thinkers. And also in literature. I mean, John Berger written award-winning books and was considered the top art critic of the 20th century, and that was one of his best friends. And they had a huge correspondence that was like boxes of letters. A brilliant read. Yeah. So basically, shaped that into a screenplay, and it won 8 awards at screenplay competitions, and working with a producer and director to develop it. We'll see what happens.
So is that the script that you won award for? You're an award-winning writer, so for which one and what was the award?
Yes, for modern art. It won Burbank International Film Festival, Hollywood Real Film Festival. Just one sec, I've kind of forgotten what they are. You lose track after a little bit, but it's all very nice. Bristol Independent Film Festival, Oil Valley Film Festival, Page Turner Screenplays, Ojai Film Festival, some other ones.
Is that available on Vimeo?
No. There's like a trailer that I cut together that's like a sizzle reel. It's like for people who... Yeah?
I was wondering, why can't people have, with so much technology there, I was finding it difficult to find your movies on different platforms at so many places, and then I have to pay to that platform just to watch your movie. So instead of that, why don't you have a website where all your films are there at one place, and I just subscribe to your website to watch your content, and that's it. I don't have to go to so many other places to figure out and to explore which films are at which location and if they are available or not available and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I have links to like the Amazon, iTunes, IMDb, but the problem with that is I don't own it. So I can only link to another company. The distribution companies own the content. And so most of the time you have to be subscribed to it because that's how they make money. I don't make money from it. I get royalties, which are like not very good in independent film. But the HBO royalties should be better, but NFT royalties are better.
Yeah. And NFTs would be eternal, or that's all in the contract, I guess. So it cannot be tapered with, or it's there in the code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's much more of a percentage than you get on film or anything else. I mean, it'll be interesting to see when more filmmakers come into the space and when more film is made available through NFTs, which I think it will.
Oh, that would be such an awesome idea. So I have to go nowhere. I just can pay for that NFT and watch the film. And that's it.
Yeah. I think that'll be how it plays out in the end, especially for independent film. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I think David Lynch just dropped a piece on Super Rare.
Oh, is it? Let me check.
And I know Quentin Tarantino wanted to drop a piece, but in the end he didn't have the rights to the script at the time or something, or there was some kind of IP issue. So they're aware of it, they have ideas. I think it'll happen more and more.
Which is a favorite Tarantino film?
That's really hard to choose. I mean, I like all of them, but I think probably Inglourious Bastards is the most well-rounded in terms of like the humor and the quality of the dialogue, and I actually really want to watch that now.
Yeah, yes, I am going to watch it too.
I'm watching it. Yeah. Like the
I
whole
just love the.
what?
Go on. I just love the way he ends those movies, apart from every other awesome thing about the films.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean Hitler gets shot in that, doesn't he? That's a good. That's a good one.
There's always somebody dying in the end.
Yeah, loads of people dying. That's the one thing you can count. Oh yeah, I mean with um the Manson killers getting brutally murdered instead of the victims. That was great. So satisfying, you know. Like this is a movie version of what we all would have wanted to happen. And I'm trying to see where I can watch it. Oh, I have Hulu. Okay, I can watch it on Hulu.
And
Nice.
as you mentioned with the production houses, so even it is different country to country wise, because those links I was even if I searched, I couldn't find that here. So it wasn't available in Amazon.in.
It's not available on Amazon. Oh, okay. Well, if you type in the name of the movie on Google, Road to the Well. Let me see here. That it comes up in like a sidebar watch movie on Google, or it should do. I guess depending on your browser, and then on there it should tell you.
So if you're on the link, could you just put that in the chat here? I will.
Yeah. I mean, just Google search Road to the Well. But here we go. Ba-bam. It's free on... So it's on Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime, Roku,
Okay.
Apple TV, YouTube TV.
So which, amongst all these films you have done, which was your most memorable, or which is going to be in your heart and mind for a long time?
I would say... You know what? It's a really weird, sort of slightly violent, grotesque movie. But Road to the Well, I think, is it does have my heart a little bit, because it was the first feature that I did that I was like, yes, this is cinema. This is like a good American independent film. This is why I came to LA to make movies like this. And there was that feeling like when we were on set as well, like the director, we were all 27 at the time, myself, the director, the other lead actor. And it just felt like it was a moment in our lives, that we would always remember. And, we really did something. And, so I'm proud of it for that. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it's a meaty movie. It's like an emotional movie. It's a roller coaster of intensity. And, yeah.
Yeah, the trailer was intense.
It's super intense. It's also quite like weird in parts as well, like quirky humor and stuff like that. That's in it. It's a weird movie, but I like it. I like that about it. I like that it's weird.
So, and which is an NFT, which is a weird or with those emotions that you just mentioned.
Intensity and I would say I probably haven't done anything as contemporary as that in the NFT space, but I would say like the intensity of something like Tablets with Kopgelderstung, which is a reinterpretation of Michelangelo's Moses, which also was somewhat inspired by my late father's writing on the sculpture and Freud's take on it, and the concept of Terrablita, because it's Moses like as he's dropping the tablets on the ground, as he's just seen the golden calf, and they're worshipping this false idol, and the sort of irony of of digital art being like the golden calf, right? And traditional art sort of like dropping the tablets in shock, and but my participation in that, and sort of imagining that like deep sense of guilt and awe at the power and terribility of the wrath of my late father's legacy, looking at it in horror. I think all that intensity sort of came out in tablets. I've done some pretty intense poems. You could probably flick through most of them and go, oh, that's pretty intense.
So apart from NFTs, where do you publish your poems, or where?
Nowhere. No. Yeah, I don't think you can find my poetry anywhere else, because I write them and then I perform them and then I make the NFT out of it, and that's the process that I go through. And maybe at some point I'll make a book from them, but I don't see the need to or purpose of doing so right now.
So what is your process of creating those NFTs? Art, there is 3 to 4 aspects to it: art, poetry, music, and then the narration of that. So what is the process of, how does the idea like the inception, and take us through how it ends and it is minted?
I mean, it has to start with the concept, the initial idea for the piece, and then the poem, and working with the artist, the visual artist, tend to go symbiotically, and like running alongside each other, sometimes like sending back sketches or notes. Like quite often I'll draft like some notes for the poem first and we'll talk about the concept first, and then they'll get sketching and send something back. And 99% of the time I'm blown away by the people I'm working with, because I'm often working with people who I just think are just world-class artists. And so they send something back and I'll go, wow, I'm so lucky to be a part of this. And then I'll perform the piece here with my microphone and these headphones exactly like this. And then probably I'll perform the piece like a dozen. So sometimes it can take like, a whole day of performing the piece to get a take that I want. And sometimes I have to cut it together from different takes, and then I'll score it with the music. I started scoring my own pieces late last year. I used to like license and sample music before that and remix it, but then I wanted to create my own original sounds, just because I wanted to. And so that also takes a long time, because music is a whole other craft. But the closest I can come, I think, is creating a soundscape with like the sounds of cellos and the different instruments available on the music software that I have.
What software do you use?
Orchestra Tools. And you can download like the Berlin Symphony Orchestra from that, and which is kind of cool to think of, like when you're pressing a key, that was a cellist from the Berlin Symphony Orchestra making that note. So it's cool what's possible. It doesn't sound the same as a live orchestra, but it, for creating a soundscape where the performance and the visuals are at the forefront, and it's like scoring a film. You write the music to the visuals and the performance as well. So the music is bias in that it's designed to showcase the performance and the visuals best. So it's not a music piece. Whereas if you were creating a music piece, you wouldn't worry about the music intruding on those things. So because the music is the show, the main show, whereas when it's like more like a score, it's a fine art of like when to come in and you know, basically creating the emotional sounds around what's going on. So then I'll put the music to it, and usually by that stage it's all finished. Yeah, unless you know, yeah,
unless
you know, if I'm contributing to the visuals, then that's different too. But I usually finish the visuals around the same time I'm writing the piece.
So these artists that you collaborate with, how do you spot them? Or if somebody from the audience listening wants to join or do a project with you, what would you say to that?
I would say, yeah, I mean, get involved. I mean, if you've got what it takes and you've been practicing your craft as an artist for, you know, a long time.
How long?
I don't know a good answer for that, but I think, like in you know, in the traditional world, like you have to just be so dedicated to what you're doing that it's all the time, right? I think it's very much like that, but the difference is that if you do really have the talent, then you have a much better chance to shine in NFT community, because it functions a bit more like a meritocracy. Maybe that's a controversial statement, but I think in the arts, in any realm of the traditional world, there's so much of like, you have to suck up to someone for years until they give your resume to someone and your talent doesn't even come into play. Whereas in Web3, it's like, there's my talent immediately. Do you like it or not? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then a lot of people decide if they like it. So yeah, I mean, absolutely hone your craft and you know, define the artist that you are, and then put it out there and you'll meet people.
So they can, after putting it out, if they want to collaborate specifically with you, how do you, what is the quickest and best way? Twitter, tweeting it to you, or what else? Or do you even entertain people showing their artworks to you, or is it you going out and looking at people's work?
Yeah, I go out and look at people, and I like check certain people's feeds all the time. And I, you know, anybody who follows my feed will see I support artists and NFT every day. I'll retweet about 10 different artists. That's just a rule of thumb. That's just like, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's all, you know. So I'll go out and I'll look at stuff. And basically the best way to catch my eye is just if a bunch of artists that I like share your work, then I'll probably end up seeing it. So yeah, get involved, like look at the artists that I'm sharing, look at the artists that they're sharing, and sort of engage and with the tweets, and eventually I think, you know, if it catches their eye, it'll probably catch my eye.
Wonderful. I just love a couple of works that you had shared. Those oil on canvas works were awesome. Even the 3D works in your timeline. So yeah, you could go to Laurence's timeline to see the recent discoveries of his. So yeah, thanks for that. About music, I am a visual artist too. I create NFTs. There are about 70 in one collection and 152 in the other one. I like to add music to my NFTs, but that's just like an add-on. I'm not really experienced in creating music, So I try to find royalty free loop musics online and I just put it in. So I was wondering, because that takes additional effort to put that in. So should I just create artworks like visually that I'm putting in, or should I add music as well to it? What do you think?
Wait, you're a visual artist and you're adding music to it?
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
music is not my contribution. My contribution to music would be just to finding the best one and putting it in. I
Mhm.
haven't created the music. These are royalty free musics that I'm
Mhm.
adding to my visuals.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if it's like the main show of what you have to offer is your visuals, and that's where the value is. Of course, if you think that music will accentuate that, like a classic piece or something, of course. I mean, it. I think, and especially if it's in the description what it is, then do whatever creates the best result.
Mhm.
I think because in cinema as well, they source classic recordings and things like that all the time, and license music for it as well. But you look at a film as a whole. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is a great example. There's a ton of his movies license the music from elsewhere, other music that's already been done, and he's like curating the soundtrack from music that's already been published.
Mhm.
As long as you go through the correct legal steps of licensing it and doing it in a way that you're protected legally, then go for it. Yeah, I think if you want to take it another step further, then create your own music for it. But that obviously takes time and effort and um, learning how to score a painting.
Yeah, that would be difficult, and it would take so much time to learn. That's whole new part of your brain working. Like there's totally different skills to that, right?
Yeah, and I've totally resigned to the fact that my scores, you know, probably not going to be as good as a film scores, or in a Stanley Kubrick movie or something like that. But hey, even in Stanley Kubrick movies, he has licensed like classical songs.
So you are more into the classical songs of the European places. I was seeing this video on YouTube about the composer of Dunes, the movie. So he was like, all the star movies and all the sci-fi movies are all these big cellos and orchestras and these vibrating songs. We are used to hearing those, but then he went out and searched for new, because it's an alien galaxy, right? It's an alien planet. So he wanted to put in some alien sort of music or some instruments that haven't been used before. So you should see that video. It's really interesting. So the flutes he has brought in, or the way of those sands and those the works that he has created in, it's really
Yeah,
interesting to see that.
I love
So
I love the Dune soundtrack, and I mean, you bring up a good point that actually like sound effects can serve as instruments and notes in a really unexpected ways.
so do you think, would you go and experiment with something totally new, like from something from Africa or from India or China or Southeast, pick up some tracks like that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd be open minded to it as long as it fits with the piece. And like, yeah, I'm thinking now. I often use like the sound of the ocean or wind, or um, there's actually some sound effects of like a spaceship engine that I've used quite a lot in in some of my pieces, because it's like a particular kind of hum, and that just I guess took the place of a cello or a violin, just the sound of a spaceship hum. It was, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still something I'm exploring. How to create the soundscapes, but it can absolutely come from anywhere. Yeah.
There was this NFT which I had done. It was called Death Trap. That was my closest thing to making my own score. I wanted to portray the war or things that are happening in Ukraine or the places there. So there are skulls in between, trapped. So it's called Death Trap because life at what cost? What we get out of war is just a pile of skulls and nothing else. So in this NFT, there was this trap of skulls in the foreground, and there were soldiers and destruction and war zone and blast in the background, and the music was of cannons and bombs and alarms, an ambulance and those things. And then also I added a track of those orchestra of music where they try to build up tension. So I put all those 4-5 tracks together in a time and then added that. it,
Cool.
I'll share that with you.
Yeah, please do. That sounds great. I'd love to hear it. I mean, what an emotional roller coaster that sounds like.
Awesome. So, Laurence, it was amazing to chat with you today. It's been almost 2 hours. No, 2 hours it has been. So, what words would you like to conclude with?
I would say live passionately. Love what you do and do it to the fullest, and don't get distracted by the bullshit. Yeah, that's all.
Awesome. So thank you once again for coming to the show. Best wishes to yourself, your girlfriend, your mom for all the works, and I'm so looking forward to see that 10,000 project of yours, which will, I think, would come in next 6 to 8 months. So best wishes for everything. We'll catch you soon in the Twitter spaces and all other spaces that you're in. And definitely within a week, I'm going to watch that movie, The Road to Well.
Yeah, cool.
So,
yeah, let me know if it's not available in India. I'll send you the Vimeo.
Thanks for tuning in. Connect with me on Twitter and Instagram to get updates on the new shows and to participate on live recordings. All links are mentioned in the show notes. We will be back next week with another fantastic episode.